Hello, everyone, and welcome to this video on navigating through the pen tool exercises. This is the first in a series of short videos to guide you through the exercises that will help you create paths using the pen tool, understanding paths and what they're used for, creating layers to hold your objects you're creating, and filling an object and placing a stroke around the object. You'll need to complete the following steps to prepare for working on the pen tool exercises. Number one, navigate to our class folder on the Google Drive. You've been sent an invitation to share the file on this drive. Number two, download the pen tool exercise PDF files and JPEG files. Number three, open the Photoshop program and create a new document. Select print as the preset. Number four, in the preset details box, set a width of 8.5 by 11. Choose inches as your increment. Choose portrait as the orientation. The resolution should be set to 300. The color mode should be CMYK for a print document. And the background contents should be set to white. The preset details box should look like this one at the right. And when all your fields are filled in correctly, just click Create to create your new document. File, New, Print as the presets, letter, width of 8.5, height by 11, increments in inches, orientation is portrait, the resolution is set to 300, the color mode should be set to CMYK color, and the background color set to white. Hit Create. This is our document that we'll be working on. It's an 8.5 by 11 document. Next, you'll need to bring in the templates to create the exercises. Under File, come down to Place Embedded. This will bring up a box that where you can navigate to the folder that holds the downloads that you've taken from the Google Drive. Our first exercise is a PDF file. So click on the PDF file, click on Place. You'll get a box that asks to open as a smart object. You select number one, click OK, and you'll see that the template comes into your document. It has an X across the image. That means the image is not placed and set into the document. It's simply a representation of where it will go. If you were to save this document as is right now, and then open it on another computer, you would simply get a box with an X in it, and the images would not be contained in the box. In an effort to embed the image, come up to the check mark at the top of the interface, commit to transform, and your X disappears, and now the image is embedded on your page. You should create a 5-step card at this point to review this process. Let's look at it one more time together, and we'll go through the 5 steps. Step number one, go to File, come down to Place Embed. When you click on that option, a box will open that will allow you to choose the template that you're looking to use. In this case, they're in icon view mode. I can change them to list, and your files may look like this in your folder. We want to choose pen tool exercise number one, which is a PDF. So we'll click on the pen tool exercise one and click Place. This is your second step. The third step is to click on the icon representing the template and to click OK. Now your template is temporarily placed into your document. And to embed it permanently, step 4 is to click on the checkbox in the interface and commit it to your document. And now you're ready with your document in place to start your exercise. Okay. There's going to be a few tools that you're going to need to have in order to work on this exercise. So under the window pull down menu, come down to tools if they're not already open on in your program, and it will open your toolbox. Okay. We'll also need layers. So we'll come down again in the window pull down menu to layers and open up the layers palette. The layers palette in this case also has the properties palette attached to it. We can separate that and simply close the properties box. If that's not connected to yours, your layers list at this point should look like this. You should have a background and a pen tool exercise 1. Okay, there's 2 here because I repeated the process to show you what to put in your 5-step card. So I'm going to select that layer and hit the trash can to delete it. So we only have the layers that are necessary to perform this exercise. Okay. So you'll see that in our layers now we have background and pen tool exercise 1. At this point, you'll need one more window open. So we'll go to window and come down to paths, and it will open your path list as well. Right now we have no paths created, so there aren't any in the list. We're going to draw over the top of this template, and right now as it stands, it's a little bit dark to do any drawing on top of. So what we'll do is select our pen tool exercise layer. You'll see that when you select it, it becomes gray. And under opacity, let's take the opacity down with the slider bar to about 30 to 35%. Now we're looking at 30% and we have a ghost image to work from. We can also select that pen tool layer, or I'm sorry, the pen tool exercise layer, and click on the little lock, and it will lock that layer so that now we can't grab the template and move it. Okay, we can't do anything to it. We can't erase it. We can't do anything to it at all because it's locked into place. Okay, very important, because you don't want to be drawing on your image and then by accident move your template and everything becomes out of alignment at that point. Okay, the tool we're going to be using in this first exercise is the pen tool. It's the one right here on your toolbox. Okay, you can see the little movie come up when you roll over it, and it demonstrates how to use the tool. Okay, I'm also going to demonstrate to you how to use the tool. I'm going to use the first square that we're going to draw as an example. And then I'm going to use the 8 as a second example on this exercise, on exercise 1, because the 8 is a little bit more of a complex object, and you'll end up with actually 3 pieces to create this number 8. The box is simple. It's just a single image. There'll be one layer used to create the box. Okay, so in order to see it a little bit better, I'm going to come to my magnifying glass and click on the magnifying glass, and then click in the middle of the box and hold down your mouse, and it should grow your image to a size that you can see comfortably to work with. Okay, so we're going to use the pen tool. So we'll click on the pen tool and we'll come out onto the template, and I have marked on this template where your anchor points should go in an effort to create the path that's going to be used to create this first square. Okay. We need a layer to put our object on, and we're going to create a path that's going to allow us to fill and stroke the piece of art. So In the layers box, under the little hamburger menu, we can click on that and we can say, click on new layer. You can name that square number 1 and click OK. And there you have a place for your artwork to have as a home. Okay, we're selected onto the pen tool. We can click and release to make the first anchor point. You'll see that immediately a path that comes up in your path list that's labeled as work path. We'll get to that and take care of that after we've completed our path that we're creating. As I told you in class on Tuesday, the shift key, holding the shift key will allow you to make perfectly straight lines, vertically, horizontally, and at a 45-degree angle. So we're going to hold the shift key and come up to our second anchor point and click and release. And then we'll come to our third anchor point, click and release. Come down to our fourth anchor point, click and release. And then finally, we're going to come back to our first anchor point. And because, as you recall, each line segment has a beginning point and an end point, we'll have to put the end point over here on this, and you'll see that you're closing that shape when you roll over that last end point. In order to click on it, there'll be a little circle behind the pen tool that you see appear. That's telling you that you're closing the shape. So if we click and release, now we have a path that creates a perfect square. Okay, so over here is that path in the paths list. It's called a work path. We need to give that path a unique name in an effort to save that path for editing at a later time. And if you don't give it a unique name, the computer will always call it work path and will overwrite the last work path that was in there. So if you just simply click on the word, double click on the word, work path, it will come up as path number 1, but we're going to have a number of paths on this page. So we're going to want to name this square number 1. And you'll notice that we named it the exact same thing as the layer. So the path should have the same name as the layer on the image that you're working on. So we'll click OK. And now we have our first path. A path isn't a piece of art. It's just simply telling the computer where our piece of art is going to be located. And it's also, we need to make this path active in order to fill our image and to put a stroke around it. So that's the next thing we're going to do. We're going to fill this image with a color, and then we'll put a stroke around it. Here's your foreground and your background color. If you click on the foreground color, you'll get the color picker box, and you can slide the slider bar to choose the hue that you want to fill the object with. I'm going to choose red and click OK. And then our foreground color is now red. I'm going to put a stroke on it that's black. So I'm going to come down here and select black on the color picker. You'll notice that in the number box down here, it's at all zeros. That's because black is represented by 6 zeros. So we'll click on that and click OK. And now we have a foreground color of red, a background color of black. As I said, we need to make our path active to fill the box. So we know that when a path is active, that it creates marching ants. So how do we get those marching ants to come out? The small hamburger menu in the path layer or in the path list, click on that, come down to make selection. It will ask you to make selection. It will ask about a feather radius. For now, we don't really need to know what that is. That'll be explained in another lesson. Just click OK if the number is 0. If the number isn't 0, put a 0 in there and click OK. And you'll see that now you have the marching ants, which make that path active. And now we can create our piece of artwork. Okay. We need to select square number 1 in the layers list. Okay. And we need to make sure that the square number 1 path is not selected. Okay. If I select it, it's gray. We want to deselect it by clicking outside of the area of the list. Okay. So we have square number 1 in our layers selected, but not in our paths. Okay. Now we want to fill this square with red. So under edit, which means change. So we're going to change this image. We're going to change it to red. Click on edit and come down to fill. And then under contents, you can click on the pull down menu and tell it to select the foreground color, which is red, and click OK. And now you have a red box. The ants are still marching. They're still active. So we can go back up to edit, come down to stroke, and we can tell our stroke box that we want the width to be 6 pixels. 6 pixels equals a 1-point rule. Okay. Under color, we want to select in the color box. And at this point, because the stroke is always the foreground color, we can select that black in our color picker again. Okay, all the zeros. Click OK. And then click OK in the stroke box. And you'll see that you have a black rule around a red box. In order to deselect or release the marching ants, go up to select in our interface and come down to deselect, or let me get my ants back. On a Mac, it's Command D will deselect. I believe on a PC, it's either Control or Option D that will deselect it. I'm not exactly sure. It should be listed. If you look under select, deselect, to the right should be the shortcut for the process. Okay. So now we have a red square place, and we have a layer for our red square. We have a path for our red square. We can move on to our second object. Okay. So let's just do one of these polygons. Okay. Because now we're not going to be able to use shift to make our lines, because this isn't a 45-degree angle. It's a little less than that. So we'll make this 6-sided polygon. In order to do that, we need to create a new layer. And we'll call it 6 side 1, because it's the 6-sided polygon, and it's the first one in its row. So we'll know what that is. So our new layer will come over here and be 6 side 1. Now we have to create a path in order to create this image. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to click and release, come up to this anchor point, click and release. Because it's a straight line, we can just simply click and release wherever we need to. Click and release, click and release. And I didn't mention this at the top, but because this is completely horizontal here, we can hold shift and it will make that completely horizontal line. And then when we get up here to where we started, you'll see when you roll over that first anchor point to complete the closed object, you'll get a little circle behind the pen tool. And when you click, now we have a path that is a 6-sided polygon. So we want to name it the same thing that we named the layer. So double click on the word work path and come in here and call it 6 side 1. Okay, now this path is selected. So we don't want to select that, or we do want the path selected, and we'll come up to the hamburger menu and come down to make selection, and that will create the marching ants. You'll get the make selection box. Remember, with this feather radius, it should be 0. When you hit OK, then the ants come out. Okay, so we have the marching ants on our 6-sided polygon. You'll see that over here, this path is no longer selected, but our layer is, so now we're ready to go to work. Let's fill this object. Go to Edit, Fill, okay? And we'll say, this time, let's go down to Color. And when you select Color, it opens up that color picker. So we can select any color we want. Let's make it this green color. And I'm going to select somewhere in the middle of the area here to make it a little more darker green than this very bright green. So I'll select that and click OK, and click OK here, and that will fill our object. Now we still have the marching ants, and we want to put a stroke around this. So let's go to Edit, come down to Stroke, and this time you'll see that our width of our stroke remains 6 pixels. It's because it will remain 6 because we told it to be 6, and it will stay at 6 until we change it. Okay, so what color do we want to make the outline on this polygon? If we click on the color box, it will open up the color picker, and let's put a dark blue stroke on this one, something like right here, and click OK. And when you come back and click OK in the stroke box, it puts the stroke on the image. You can go to Select, Deselect, and it will let go of the marching ants. And now we have two different shapes that are created with a fill and a stroke. Those are the simple, easy ones. Let's go to one of the more complex ones that we're going to have in this exercise. It is the most complex one in this exercise on this page, and it's the number 8. Okay, and when we do objects in here that have multiple pieces like this, each one of these pieces will have a separate layer. They'll both be, and each one of the pieces will have a separate path. So let's look at our number 8 here and how we would go about creating this number 8. We would make a new layer, and we're going to call the back base of this number 8, we'll call it 8 base, and click OK. You'll see that we have a layer now for 8 base. When we click with our pen tool to start our path, you'll note that it creates a new path called work path. So let's work our way around this 8, the base for the 8. This is a completely vertical line, so we can hold Shift to make that completely straight. Just click and it'll make the line. Then release Shift and come up and click on this anchor point. This is a completely horizontal line, so we can hold the Shift key to make it perfectly straight. Then come down to this anchor point. This is a perfectly vertical line, so we'll come down and click while holding Shift. Here we'll release Shift and make our next endpoint, our next anchor point over here, and then we'll hold Shift again because it's a completely vertical line. Then we'll come over here on this diagonal. We'll hold Shift to make this completely horizontal bottom. Release Shift to make the next line. Hold Shift to make the perfectly straight vertical. And then we'll close our image. You'll see that it has the little circle behind the pen tool. Okay, so once we have that, we want to name our path 8 base. So we'll double click on the words work path and call it 8 base. Okay, now we're going to want to fill this, but not quite yet. If we fill it, we won't be able to see our template behind what we filled. So we're just simply going to leave this one blank at this point. All right. And we're going to create a new layer to make this hole in the number 8 here. Okay. So we'll say new layer. And we're going to call it 8 top hole. And click OK. So we have an 8 top hole layer, but we don't have an 8 top hole path, and we need to make one. So we're going to click off of the 8 base and then go to our pen tool, and we'll come in here and make the hole that is in the number 8. We'll click here to start and hold shift because this is a perfectly level horizontal. And then we'll release shift to make the diagonal. We'll hold shift again to make the vertical. We'll release to make the diagonal, hold shift to make the vertical, or I'm sorry, the horizontal. Click on the diagonal, releasing the shift key before we click, and then hold shift to make the vertical and close the shape. Okay, that's pretty good actually. I'm surprised that it's as accurate as it is. But now over here under work path, we want to double click on the word work path, and we want to call this path 8 top hole. So it matches our path. Okay. Now we would repeat the same process to create the one at the bottom. Because this is an exercise only, we would repeat that. If we are doing this job as a real job where time is of the essence, we would simply create this shape the way that we created the others with a fill and a stroke, and then duplicate the layer and drag it down to create the second hole. But in our case, we're going to come in here and we're going to click off of 8 top hole here, and we're going to create a new layer. And we're going to name that layer. And you can name your layers by double clicking on the word layer 1 as it comes up. We're going to call it 8 bottom hole. Now we haven't filled in any of these paths yet, and you'll notice that they've disappeared. Okay, they've disappeared just because we don't have them selected in our path list. You see that when I click on 8 top hole, the path returns. When I click on 8 base, the one for 8 base returns. Okay, so we have 8 bottom hole now, and we will select our pen tool and come in and create our 8 bottom hole the same way we created the one at the top. We'll click and release, hold shift because it's a perfectly horizontal straight line. Then we'll release the shift key to make the diagonal. We'll go back to holding the shift key to make the perfect vertical, release to do the diagonal, shift to make the horizontal at top, release to make the vertical, shift to create the vertical, and then complete the shape with a diagonal. Okay, so we have our work path over here, and we want to double click on that, and we want to call it 8 bottom hole, just like the 8 top hole. And we click OK. So now we have all the paths we need to create this number 8. So let's go back. Let's put our base in. We'll click on the base layer, and we'll click on the base path, and we'll come up to the hamburger menu, and we'll come down to make selection and get our marching ants. Remember, the feather radius remains 0. clicked OK. And we get our marching ants around the base of the 8. Let's fill this. Edit, fill, and we'll fill it with a color. So we'll select color and open up our color picker. Let's make it a gold number 8. Click OK, click OK, and our base is gold. All right, let's put a stroke on that. Edit, stroke, and let's click on the color box and make the stroke black. Click OK. 6 pixels is what we want. Click OK, and we have the stroke around our base of the number 8. Then go to select and deselect. Next, let's put the top hole in. So we'll select the top hole layer, come over to the top hole path, make our path active at the hamburger menu, make selection, 0 feather radius, click OK. And now we have the top hole marching ants going around the area we want to make the top hole. Let's make it look like you can see through this 8 by filling it with white. So we'll go edit, fill, and then under contents, if we come down, we can just simply tell it to be white and click OK. We need to put a stroke on it though. We'll go to edit, stroke, and because the last color stroke we picked was black, it still remains there. And we'll click OK. And it puts the stroke around the shape. To release, select, deselect. I didn't get that. Select, deselect. There we go. All right. Now we'll repeat that process for the bottom hole. We'll click on the bottom hole layer and the bottom hole path. Go to the hamburger menu, make the selection. That the feathered radius will be 0. Click OK, and you get your marching ants. And from there, we'll fill it. Edit, fill, and we'll fill it with white. Then edit, stroke. It's still black in our box, so we'll click OK. And now we have the bottom hole for our 8. We can hit Command D on a Mac. Again, I'm not sure what it is on the PC, so you'll have to check. And you can find that out by going up to deselect, and the shortcut should be off to the right. I'm just going to hit deselect up there. And now we have our letter 8. Okay. It's created in 3 pieces and it's layered. Over here in the layers list, you can see that there's a small little eyeball that's in front of the layer. That means the layer is turned on. We can see that this is 3 different pieces because it's on 3 different layers. If you turn the eyeball off on 8 bottom hole, you can see that the hole that we created is gone. Turn the layer back on. The top hole, same thing. And the base. So we have 3 separate pieces. We can use our move tool to move it around too. Move these pieces around in here. If you click on the move tool and click on the piece you want to move, you can see that in the layers list, it selects the proper layer that you've chosen, and you can move that object around. Okay, let's say we move it to there and we're like, oh no, don't want to move it there. Let's put it back where it belongs. We can go up to edit, undo move, and it will put it back in place. Okay, then what we want to do once we get, after every one you draw, you should probably go to file and hit come down to save. And it'll ask you if you want to save it to your computer. I'm going to save this to my computer. I'll click on save to my computer. And then I will save it as pen tool exercise 1. And where am I going to save it? I have my folder names CCC pen tool exercises. I'm going to put it in there. If we wanted to put it on the desktop, you can navigate to the desktop. Recent places that you had open will also show up, but I'm going to put it in the pen tool exercises and hit save and click OK. And now it's saved, and you can move on to the next image. Okay. I'm not going to do any more images on here. I think you can, you get the idea. I did the hardest one as an example. I did the easiest one as an example. And then I did one that was somewhere in between. So if you have any problems with this, you know how to get in contact with me, or just simply watch the video again. Text me if you have any questions. This is the end of video number 1. Thanks for watching, and good luck with pen tool exercise number 1.